right. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Spotlight on CS Ops, where we're talking to CS Ops leaders, movers, and shakers. I'm here with my host, Sean, my co-host, Jean Neuron. How you doing, John?
Good.
Excellent. And joining us today, Mindy Martins. I'm representing Texas again. Mindy, a fellow Austinite, here with me. So Mindy and I get to hang out in person on occasion, but we're so thrilled to have Mindy here. Mindy is a Gainsight consultant and a fractional Gainsight admin. So she has seen and done a whole lot of things. And Mindy, we're so excited to have you here today.
I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, thanks again for joining us today, Mindy. Really a pleasure. Can you tell us a little bit more about your journey? Like, how did you become a Gainsight consultant and get into the field?
Yeah, well, I mean, my whole career has been in customer success. When you ask people how they got into career path and they say like they just kind of fell into it, that is exactly what happened to me. I fell into a role that wasn't called customer success, but was basically a CSM 10 years ago. And from there, I went to a startup officially as a CSM. They purchased Gainsight, didn't really have anyone to run it, and is so common for CS ops people. At first, it was like, oh, I just need this little thing, and nobody's gonna do it for me. So I'm just gonna do that really fast. And then, oh wait, that was actually kind of fun. And look what else I can do until, it's like encroached on my job more and more until I was a full-time Gainsight admin and CS ops person. And that was, I mean, like 7 years ago. So it's been a long time for me. I've been in the CS ops space. Most recently, I was more in like a specifically a Gainsight admin role where I was separated from the CS ops team and in like an IT role, just as specializing on the technical side of Gainsight, but I wanted to get back into like I love the technical side, but also there's so much like decision making that happens in CS ops that I didn't want to be left out of. That's kind of why I went back to or I'm starting my journey really now and being a consultant.
Very
Amazing.
cool.
And congratulations.
Thank you.
Talk to us about how you sort of arrived at that conclusion, or of like, oh, I'm going to put some words in your mouth, and you tell me if this is accurate or not. But
Okay.
like, I maybe I'm tired of being the order taker, or just at the very end of a process of decisions being made, and I'm just put my hands on the keyboard to implement them. Um, how did you decide, or what was occurring that kind of gave you the unease to say, I'm going to make a shift?
Yeah, I'm actually going to start a step further back in terms of why I thought I would really enjoy just being the hands-on keys and why that didn't turn out
Yeah,
to be
please.
true. So I think that CS ops can be so messy, right? Because you're in the center of, you've got the customer success team, but then you're playing middleman with product teams and maybe support and sales team. And there was just so much to me that I was like, I want to get out of here. I just love, like I want to spend all my time in a rule and looking at the data, and that's going to be amazing. So I went down that path and said, I'm going to get out of the messiness. People will just tell me what to do, and I'll just enjoy doing it. And then what happened was that I realized that even though it's so messy to be in the decision making, it is really awful to be told, okay, we've made this decision and you know that it's not going to work out. Like experience tells you this is the wrong path. I really don't want to do this. I'm like trying to push back, but nobody's listening to me. And eventually it just became too much where you have to have a certain level of power, especially when you have enough experience to have very strong opinions about things. Um, that I just felt I need to get back into a little bit more decision making, or at least, more respect there, where you feel like you have a part of the decision making process.
Feels like it's
The
rough to be making the decision, and maybe what you're saying is rougher to be living with the decision that someone else made. So time to move back upstream or sideways, whatever analogy we would
Yeah.
use to be like, let me be in the process instead of just at the end of it.
At least for me, I think some people can check out and just be like, you know what? They're making this decision, whatever. I'm getting paid. But for me, it just, I did that for a while until it got to me.
What I love the story because it's like you went to being kind of a mechanic and now sort of hoping to design the car as well. What are some of the things that you're like? What do you need in your tool belt, or what are you looking to augment in your tool belt that helps you kind of make that transition from maybe mechanic to designer?
Yeah, I think I spent the last few years just really specializing in what Gainsight can do, and being really in the weeds, like, oh, you want to do whatever and it requires the API or like something else that someone else would be like, Gainsight can't do that. I'd be like, I bet I can figure out a way to do this. That's where I've been the last few years, and that's really fun. But that's a totally different skill set than people management, right? Not necessarily being a manager, but stakeholder management about really understanding requirements. Like, what are you trying to accomplish? And tell me why you think this is the best way to do it. And is this really the most important thing? So I think that skill set is really asking good questions. I don't even know if there's a better name for that, but that is such a good skill set, is asking the right questions. And then also just managing people's expectations, helping them understand pros and cons about their decisions. And I think that's the thing, is that I don't necessarily want to be the decision maker, but I feel like I need to be heard. Like, hey, if you make this decision, here's what's going to happen. And if you make this decision, here's what's going to happen. And I have at least warned you. And like, if we go down this path together, you know, we'll live through it, but I've said my piece. That's really where it comes down to for me.
It's like life of, or is it the life of hard knocks or the school of hard knocks? You are offering your education for free to those who will listen, and they
Yeah.
can eat it or not. It sounds like. Do you have some favorite discovery questions? Like, I hear this one a lot. Like, I want to ask good questions, or
Mhm.
maybe sometimes people say, actually in CSF, like I struggle with discovery because I just want to go build the rule. So do you have some like mainstays or some really proven discovery tactics or questions that are in your quiver that you're willing to share?
Yeah, let's see. Trying to think about the most generic ones, because there might be, depending on what people are asking for, like, oh, I need this dashboard or I need this CTA. I might ask different questions. But in general, one of my favorite questions is just to ask a version of like, tell me more about where this is coming from. Like, there's always something like, oh, well, their manager is getting mad at them for whatever. It's going to be a new OKR or whatever it is. And that is ultimately the broader context that I'm trying to figure out, is where is this coming from? You're asking for something, but why? Like, why is it? Or why is it important to you is another
Hmm.
question. Um, then, I mean, once again, things like what what does success even look like? I know that sounds like so generic, but it's like they need a
No,
certain
it's a
data
great
point,
question.
or they need, yeah, exactly.
Even
So I think,
sometimes it's even just getting someone else to iterate it. Like they're like, I just want a CTA, a call to action for people maybe who aren't familiar with Gainsight parlance, which is like, the rule based, oh, the usage dropped. So I'm going to get a CTA that helps me action it. But I think you're right. Sometimes it's just maybe someone hadn't even thought about what success looks like because they've gotten
yeah.
so focused on the solution. And so you coming along and asking it can be very enlightening. It's sort of it even encourage somebody else to stop and think about what they're after.
Yeah, exactly. Another one would be like, what's your intention with this? Because sometimes people know what they think they want, but their intentions are the most important thing. this happened just recently where someone's like, I need this report. It's like, okay, well, how do you intend to use this? Or what do you need it for? It's like, oh, well, we have this new metric. And it's really important to our leadership or whatever it is. That's something totally different. Because then I can ask, that leads you into the next right question. It's like, okay, well, so who's the right audience? Is it really for the CSMs? Is it for your executive team? Is it for middle management? Everyone's going to have a different perspective or a need to look at it as well.
That's so true. Like having understanding like, where they're coming from makes complete sense. Like, and I'm glad to hear that you've got some great questions there. Is there anything that you did that that kind of equipped you for this? Like, is this something that you just kind of learned on the go or learned on the job? Or is there a book or anything that resources or learning materials that helped you get to this point in your career?
I can't say any books specifically, but the community for Gainsight admins in Slack is amazing, but really just any community learning from each other. And then for me, honestly, it's been a lot of hard experience. Like you do something and then whoever asks for it comes back and says, oh, well, that's not what we need, or this isn't working the right way. I feel like doing things poorly can teach you a lot about the right questions to ask ahead of time.
I love
I'm
School
with
of
you
Hard
on that.
Knocks.
Like,
Exactly. So,
like I
I
might
mean,
have
I'm
done it
trying.
wrong, but I learned more than I would have if I had done it right.
Exactly. I'm trying to think though to be helpful to other people so that they don't have to experience that. I mean, part of it is that you just have to experience it, but I also think that the community can be so helpful just in terms of, hey, I'm being asked to do this. Does anyone foresee reasons that I shouldn't or like what's going to happen? Because people are so willing to share. And I still do that for things that I haven't experienced quite yet. It's just like, hey, what don't I know that I should know before I take this leap?
That's awesome. You got to connect yourself out there, right? There's so many practitioners that have gone before us that have tried it out and whatnot. So I love that.
I have availed myself of Mindy's knowledge on more than one occasion. I'm reminded, I don't quite remember all the details, Mindy, but I know I was up against a fairly challenging data puzzle. And as some people know, I occasionally host a meetup for CS Ops folks in Austin, and Mindy is a mainstay there. And I cornered her in the bakery that we meet at. I'm like, I really need your input on this. So, from this member of the community, I say thank you for all of your experience and your willingness to share it.
Oh, well, you're welcome. And it goes both ways, Matthew. I've picked your brain about a lot of things. But this is the great thing about community because I feel like when you're solving somebody else's problem, at least for me, it feels like a puzzle. It feels fun. When you're solving your own problem, it just feels like work.
That's so true. Other
Exactly.
people,
'Cause, like in that conversation, I was like, okay, Matthew, I think here's what you need to do. And I've thought about it. And then you just kind of walk away. I don't have to live with the consequences, right?
I do remember you saying that too. It's so fun to solve someone else's problem because I don't know, the stress and the pressure are just off. And so, yes, I remember that. I
Yeah.
remember that well.
Yeah. There's also something to be said about, at least I was at my last company for 3 years. You get stuck in such a rut of like, this is how our data works. This is how our processes work. That I remember someone telling me, like, oh, I need to find another job because I just need to find new problems to care about. Because you're so used to just carrying the same problems over and over and over again that it's just fun to solve other problems sometimes.
Yeah, that's the new frame we need to use to look at it. Like when you get stumped or stuck or discouraged, like, what if this was someone else's problem? How would I challenge? How would I deal with that?
Maybe you might be onto something there.
Think so. We'll just reframe. It's probably got a fancy name already, but I'm all for it.
Yeah.
the I love the business cases in the community too. It's almost like it's like going through a business case in business school, whatever. It's like, yeah, you're given a problem. Let's see the five different answers. I think it's an amazing experience because you get, especially when you get different people's perspectives, you just learn so much. Um, so yeah, thank you for being a big part of our community, both in Austin, but also online, where you're constantly adding, your thoughts. How do you? I was going to ask you about the development of your career. I mean, you've gone from we were talking about mechanic to design, and now you're looking at like you're more of a gainsight consultant. Do you now do this for multiple customers, or and how do you manage your world?
Yeah, right now I'm working with two specifically, but that number, hopefully increases in the future, maybe. I don't know. I'm still, like I said, this is a bit of a new journey for me, but I would love to work with a lot of smaller customers. I think there's this huge challenge with Gainsight specifically, which is what I specialize in, that it takes someone who really knows what they're doing to make the most of it, to get the full value out of it. And we have these small companies trying to leverage Gainsight, but either they don't have a full-time, I mean, they definitely don't have a full-time admin. Maybe they have someone in CS ops like trying to learn and they're splitting responsibilities or whatnot. But I would really like to help those small companies just kind of, they don't need a full game site admin, but I think they could be so much more effective in their customer success journey if they just had someone who's dedicated fractionally to making sure their data is up to date, that when they want new motions, new plans, that someone can guide them and implement those in Gainsight. So those are the types of customers that I really like to focus on, which is why I call myself a fractional Gainsight admin, is because not everyone, I think anyone who purchases Gainsight, I think could really benefit from someone who has expertise, but they don't need a full-time person to do that. And rather than making someone juggle and learn, I think they should just outsource that to me.
I
Your
love that.
pitch
I think
is
it's so true.
perfect. I like it.
Oh, perfect.
And it's probably a lot of fun because you go into like these new environments that don't have a lot of history probably, and they're just implementing the tool for the first time. So you coming in and helping them just make sure that they get the value right away makes so much sense. I absolutely love what you said.
And they're
Yeah.
other people's problems, so they're super fun.
Well, if you stay with the customer long enough, they become your problems.
They
So,
become so that's the trick
I
then to move on before
no,
the ownership
I always
transfers.
try to make sure I'm not leaving problems for someone else. But yeah, there is definitely something to that as well.
Super smart. Super smart.
Yeah.
Let me ask you this. I'm going to go back to First Fridays, or that event that we've had on the first Fridays of the month. What brought you to those events, and what have you gotten out of that, as far as it could be gain setting, it could be CS ops, it could be anything else, like, but you've been such a mainstay or a regular there. um what's that done for you and for your journey?
Yeah, I think what originally motivated me was just I was feeling so isolated. I've been working for fully remote companies for several years. I mean, even pre-COVID, so I don't see coworkers, and I was a lone Gainsight admin, so I didn't have anyone to bounce ideas off of, like, hey, I'm thinking about doing this. Am I about to walk off a cliff? Tell me, what do you think? Um, and so I think it was both, looking for that knowledge, but really more so, it just feels really good to connect with people that are in a similar space. It makes you feel like you're not alone in those problems. And it sounds so corny when I say it, but it really is so true, because when you're working, you just sometimes feel like, especially if you're working from home, you're just kind of sitting alone. As if you don't have a large team, the problems are just all yours. And so just talking to somebody else, like, oh, I can say this term and you know what it means. It's almost like we're part of a secret club. And it's not really a secret club, but like if you're in, you know the lingo, it just feels comfortable.
I have often thought that's the community building element, which is just this common level of understanding. And it's not that we're running around with fancy degrees. I don't know. Maybe we're running around with Gainsight certifications. We might have that in common, but it's also like my stakeholder just did this, or my customer marketing team wants me to launch that. And it's just people just sort of instantly know what that space is like or what that question might be like and are there to help, commiserate, um, defend, whatever. And so that's what I've always found so inspiring about the community is just that shared level of experience and that shared sort of, yeah, I know right where you're sitting and I can either help you develop or it can help you think about ways to get out of it. Or to your point that you started with, maybe advise the team to make a new decision because you just know sort of where this might go. So well done,
Yeah.
Mindy. I appreciate all of your expertise over the years.
No, I mean, the only thing that I can think of that compares to the Gainsight community is honestly just being a mom and connecting with other moms and talking about like children and being a parent. Like, there's just something about that experience where sometimes you just need someone else who's like, oh, I get it. And
Yeah.
sometimes you need someone else. It's like, you know what? I know what's going to work for you. And whether it's solution oriented or just that empathy, like, yeah, you're right, Matthew. That's exactly what it feels like. Because you just need someone who's experienced it that gets it.
I'm going to take your word for it on that particular analogy.
You have some other equivalent. You're not a mom, but you're part of some other group that I'm sure you share the same.
Triathlons, I'm sure, or running,
Exactly.
the Ironman. There's a few. I'm sure you're a part of a few communities there. Before we wrap this up, I just got since I've got you both here, and you guys have been doing these Fresh Fridays for like ever. It seems like, maybe for the audience, like, what are some tips? Like, so you find all the Gainsight people in or whatever tool that you use. You find the people in your little hub or your city. Like, what do you guys do next? Like, do you meet regular? Like, who sets these things up? Is there kind of some quick next steps that you could pass on to the folks to be able to do this in their own cities?
you, you just start. And I know that sounds so generic, but like I could have sat around for a very long time trying to figure out, oh, who's the admin and who's this and who's that. I was like, I'm just gonna start because I'm gonna and I do it during I opted to go during working hours. And so I just go set myself up at a bakery or a coffee shop or something kind of innocent and approachable for a couple of hours in the afternoon. And yeah, there were times at the start where I sat there by myself, and really, I didn't lose anything by doing
I
that
don't think
because
you
I was
ever
going to
by
work
yourself,
anyway.
but there was one that was just me and you, for sure.
There were a couple I was alone,
Oh,
but yes,
really?
and there were several more where it was you and I, and even that was fine. Like I considered that a
Yeah.
success. So I never measured it on like, well, how many people were to come. So if anyone's thinking about it, you just start, and usually I'm like just put it in an approachable place where people can relax and share, um, and then just see what develops.
Yeah, I echo that. And I can also share that it really just takes one person to make it happen. And that's what Matthew has done for Austin. But I was visiting my family in another state last year and I decided to put a meetup together. And I made the mistake of trying to figure out, okay, who all wants to come and where should we meet? Give me your ideas. And I think why Austin works so well is because Matthew just says, we're meeting on this day, at this place. I'm gonna be there. Whoever wants to come can come. So anyone who wants to start it, I would say that's what you need to do. Just takes one person, kind of stick themselves out there, make the decision. Like, I'm gonna be in this place. Someone come join me, please.
I love that. Great tips. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Mindy. It's been an absolute pleasure. As you know, I've gotten to know you a lot more through this call. I knew of you, you knew of me, but it was just super exciting to learn more about you today.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I'm sure we could talk about things for hours, but well, you do on this podcast, right? So
That's
thanks
right.
for
That's
doing
right.
that.
We will have you back. We'll hear more about your fractional journey.
Yeah. Yeah. In a year, I'll let you know whether it was the best move or the worst move I ever made.
All right. We'll be listening and waiting. Thanks,
All right.
Mindy. We appreciate you so much.
Thanks.